Well, hello, everybody. It's May 22nd, 2025. I'm Rob Saik. I'm your host for this AGvisorPRO. We call it the AGvisor Podcast. It's a webinar and podcast series. We've been doing a series with Genesis Fertilizer. Today, we have Terry Drabute from Genesis Fertilizer. We have Josh Linville, who is a fertilizer expert with StoneX. We've got Ed Waldner, from just south of Medicine Hat, kind of south of Burdett by about 60 miles, kind of in that U.S. border area. We got Warren Volke, and Warren is in Big Beaver, Saskatchewan, which is the most creative name I've seen in a long time, south of Belle Plaine. Now, I don't know if there's any big beavers south of Belle Plaine. It doesn't seem to wash. Okay, so Ed, if we can have Barry mute you, please, that'd be great until I turn to you. So we're going to start off with this webinar. We're going to be looking at this. I just read a book called Culture of Control, which is a story that Ken Matuk talked about the Canadian Wheat Board and how the incumbents fought the changes that needed to happen so farmers could actually market their grain without dealing with 3 bushel or 6 bushel quotas. And the ramifications of those kind of incumbents on holding the industry back are pretty plain to read in the book. So Culture of Control, pick it up. Now, when we consider fertilizer in Canada, we're going to talk about this, the ability for us to have sovereignty of our own nitrogen supplies is very, very important. So the Genesis Fertilizer project is moving along. This is a very significant, north of $2 billion project, and farmers can participate as up to 75% equity shareholders in the Genesis project. Genesis Fertilizer is on AGvisorPRO as a partner, so you guys are free to join AGvisorPRO and then join the Genesis Fertilizer community to keep up to speed on what's going on there. So I invite you to join, download AGvisorPRO and join the Genesis Fertilizer community. Terry, we're going to start off with you with an update on what's been going on. You know, I've been talking to a lot of farmers, and a lot of farmers would say, well, is the project really going to go ahead? Well, it's going to go ahead because there's so much international, so much financial interest right now. Farmers have an opportunity to participate. Give us an update on where we're at, Terry, with respect to the Genesis Fertilizer project.
Sure, Rob. So probably the biggest thing that's taking place right now is our FEED, which stands for Front-End Engineering and Design. We've signed a contract with a South Korean company called Daelim Engineering. And Daelim, they build big things all over the world. And they're our EPC, which stands for Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Firm. So we have Daelim. We have all our engineers are currently in South Korea. We have our urea synthesis company called Stami Carbon, who is also working on the feed. We have Uday and Tyson Krupp, who do the ammonia side of the equation, are working on the feed. And then we've got local people like Mac Labroda doing the environmental registrations or permitting, and we have Stantec, who is our owner's engineers, PCL, who has signed a joint venture with Daelim, who will be doing the construction here in Canada, and they're also doing the pricing. So they get components from Daelim, PCL does the pricing, and then we have the crowns as well that we need to involve, like SaskWater, SaskPower, and Transgas, Sask Energy. So that's probably
PricewaterhouseCoopers is playing a pretty big role in the Genesis project, and you've got some news coming out about some major financial backing. I don't know if you can talk about that just yet, but it's coming, right?
Yeah. So PricewaterhouseCoopers is our financial advisor, and they're a tier 1 organization. They're all over the world, and we have signed an agreement with the company. The announcement's going to come out shortly. I mean, I've been saying shortly for about 2 weeks now, but the agreement's been signed, and it's pretty major. It includes this company, which trades $175 billion worth of commodities every year. They've got a balance sheet of $40 billion, and they're going to supply 100% of the natural gas to the site, and they're going to take 100% of the diesel exhaust fluid that we produce. And
Also, so this is interesting. So if people haven't been following, Genesis can produce urea, ammonium sulfate, and DEF, and these guys are going to take off all the DEF. So you got your offtake on the DEF.
Yes, in fact, they would probably take everything that we produce, but obviously, we want farmers to take the product from the urea and the UAS from the plant. This company is also going to sell the carbon credits, and we are going green. We did sign a contract with a company called Carbon Co., who is also working on the feed to sequester the carbon and put it in Whitecap Resources Carbon Hub, which is under construction at Belle Plaine right now. So
that site that you've got at Belle Plaine is fortuitously located right next to a carbon pipeline. 95% of the carbon, up to 1 million tons a year, is going to go into carbon capture. This creates a really green source of nitrogen for Genesis Fertilizer. And the Saskatchewan government is solidly behind the project, right, Terry? 500 million.
That's right. Yeah, it keeps changing because we keep changing. So yeah, the Saskatchewan government's behind it. We qualify for carbon credits from the federal government as well because of the carbon capture. And yeah, so at PwC or PricewaterhouseCoopers, they're also working on the debt side, and they export banks that they've involved, and yeah, there's just lots of things going on in the background. Some of these announcements and or contracts take time, but we're pretty positive about the project right now.
Well, I keep watching the project. You guys keep checking off the boxes, working with the farmers. We have two farmers on the call today. It's the first time we've done that. Terry, you've been on the road with farmers, signing up farmers. I've been getting a lot of back channel calls saying, Rob, what's your take on this thing? How's it been going at farm level for you, Terry?
It's going great, actually. I'd say the last 6 weeks we've had record involvement, so it's going pretty good. We want more and more farmers to get on board, obviously, and our target, like you said, is 75%.
Yeah. So if you're a farmer, we'll come to this in a bit. We'll come back to the farmer. So Josh, I'm going to shift over to you. Josh is a fertilizer expert, grew up on a farm just a little bit south of Kansas City, corn, soybean type of guy. But Josh follows the world fertilizer markets. And the first thing I want to ask Josh, does Canada really need more production? Because the incumbents in the industry say, no, we got lots of nitrogen fertilizer in Canada. We don't need any more. This Genesis project, if we really needed more fertilizer, we'd just expand. Well, they're making a lot of money on nitrogen fertilizer. What's your take on the Canadian situation? Let's deal with Canadian sovereignty first, okay?
I would say the short answer to that, absolutely. And I typically look at North America as a whole, right? We have a ton of north-south trade flows between the U.S. and Canada. But when you look at everything North America, we are absolutely still a net importer of nitrogen. And why doesn't anybody that's already in the field want more production? Well, think about it. If you have got a kind of a hold on the marketplace and you can keep supplies relatively tight, what does that do to pricing? It raises it. Tight supplies, demand gets big. We have to rally that price, and that means bigger margins, especially when we're living in a world across Canada, across the US, where natural gas prices are extremely cheap. So of course they don't want to expand it. That hurts their margins. If I go out and I've got, let's say I'm a major manufacturer and I go build a new plant that produces 2 million tons, for example, well, all of a sudden that's going to water down that market. That's going to beat down my margins. There's no real need to do it. That's why it's been so important trying to find outside of your typical manufacturing group to start doing stuff. Competition, more tons. Make us less reliant on these tons that come from around the world that, frankly speaking, you start looking at the top 5 lists and people would be shocked, be like, wait, whoa. We're this dependent on that country and that country. We don't like them. They're not friendly to us. So yeah, again, going back to it, absolutely. We are a net importing, Canada's a net importer. The U.S. is a net importer. North America imports nitrogen.
Well, okay. So south of the border, we've got a situation there where, there's somebody there that's very concerned about China.
and they're saying we got to make sure that we're not dependent on China.
Now, Canada has been, in the midst of all this nitrogen play. China is actually a player in the nitrogen. Where does China fit? What are they doing right now, Josh?
So China, typically speaking, and I'm going to say quote unquote normal, even though it's been several years since they've done anything normal, their normal export flow of urea is about 5.5 million ton. Why is that important? The global market of export trade is about 50 to 55 million tons per year. China's 10% of the global export marketplace. And what we've seen is, and I'm sure everybody listening remembers this, late 21, 22, what happened to your fertilizer prices? Higher and higher and higher. It's skyrocketed. And the Chinese government is obviously communist. And they saw a situation where, like, oh crap, our farmers could be in a bad way because if we allow the exporters to do whatever they want to do, there may not be enough to go around for our farmers. And as a communist government, we can't let that happen. The government started to come in and say, okay, we're going to start controlling this. What we're going to do, we're going to try and accomplish two goals. By slowing down exports, we are going to maintain more than adequate supplies for our own farmers. And number two, we are going to create a situation where our domestic price is significantly lower than the rest of the world, putting our farmers on the front foot in competition. And then all of a sudden, 5.5 million became, 4, and it became 3. And it worked. And that's the thing. Fortunately for Chinese farmers, their prices are low. Their stockpiles are tremendous. They accomplished both goals. But unfortunately for the rest of the world, China accomplished that. And China has continued to do it to the point that last year, calendar year 2024, remember, they're 5.5 million ton. They exported 262,000 over a 12-month period. January, February, March, and actually April, less than 10,000 ton total. Now
So
all of a sudden,
they just totally cut back. China still producing nitrogen, but they are clamping down on what's leaving the country.
yeah, because they have checked both boxes and they're like, boy, this is fantastic. If you go to China and you look at their workforces, which the government truly fear. I think fear is the right word. A communist government does not fear an outside party nearly as much as an uprising by their own people. So you have to worry about the working force. Your retired people are too old to do anything. The young people are too young to do anything. But the workforce is who you have to worry about. 1 out of every 4 Chinese citizens in the workforce is attached to ag. So by keeping these exports low and keeping prices low, you've just made 25% of your population happy, which as a communist party, that is fantastic. That is painting with broad stripes. But unfortunately, the rest of the world is sitting there saying, where the heck did the product go? We need product. And all of a sudden prices start to rally up because there's just not enough to go around.
So this is about the nationalization of fertilizer supplies, about fertilizer sovereignty. Tell me where, Russia has invaded Ukraine. Russia is also a producer of nitrogen. Where does Russia fall in this? We'll turn back to North America here right away.
Yeah, so you look at Russia. Now, their exports of urea have actually continued to stay very good. In fact, they've actually started to ramp up higher than pre-invasion because that's a major income flow to help pay for this war against Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, for Canada, you guys can't take product from Russia. You guys in Australia, and actually Europe is doing the same thing now, has largely blocked Russian flows. That screws up all the global trade patterns. That all of a sudden makes it to where you guys have to spend more. It's weird. Tariffs. Politicians say, oh, tariffs are going to, we're going to make those guys pay. That's what Trump said about you guys. Who paid the price on the higher potash values? We did.
Yeah,
we are the one. You guys paid Trump his tariff money using U.S. farmer income. So Canadian farmers will do the same thing with the whole Russia situation. And that's the thing.
Okay.
You start going through the top 5 list. I've got it right here for 2023. Okay. Your top 5 exporters in the world, and this should shake you up a little bit. Russia, number 1 at 7.8 million. Qatar, number 2 at 5.2. Iran, Egypt, and China. Is there anybody on that list, anybody on the call feels really, really confident about, oh, that's a trade partner we can count on for years to come?
Well, we talked about this as we were getting ready for the call, but there's a book called The Alchemy of Air by Thomas Hager. And if you haven't read that book, it's about the Haber-Bosch process. And in that book, it says that 50% of the protein of every man, woman, and child on the planet Earth owe their protein in their bodies to fertilizer, to nitrogen. So if you're seeing a population increase, albeit slowly faster in some areas, and those countries are concerned about keeping their people happy, what do you think is going to happen to supply? That's going to tighten up. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little bit, Josh, to the economics of fertilizer production, particularly in Western Canada. How is Ed's fertilizer? How is Warren's fertilizer priced? Like how do they get what establishes a price in in Calgary, in Big Beaver, in Medicine Hat and Burdett? How is the price fixed for Canadian farmers? We have some of the lowest natural gas prices on the planet, and yet how is that price fixed?
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people will sit there and look at the gas price and say, "Oh, because gas prices are low, my price of nitrogen should be low as well." And unfortunately, in this type of environment, that natural gas price, all that does is raise or lower that manufacturer's margin. The manufacturing facility is going to price that product based on the next best input chain, value chain. So whether that be, bringing trucks in from the east, bringing product from the U.S. and up into you guys, it's going to look at that value chain and say, well, if the next best option for them is 500, well, I can price at 475, price that 500 stuff out of the marketplace, and still maintain my relationships and maintain my sales at the highest possible point. And again, people get upset by it. It's like, listen, I don't say this to be rude, but these manufacturing plants were built to make money. When you look at it, these facilities, and there's nothing wrong with it. People sit there and get very, very angry about it. It's like, no, wait a minute. No, those people are either making money for the owner of the private company or they're making money for their shareholders. That is how they get paid. Their check does not say Josh Linville Farming. Their checks say Coke or CF or Yara, whoever it is. They are there to make them money. So if they can get a little bit more margin out of it, that's profitability they want. And that's everybody's value chain, right? Everybody
So
wants their
if the
piece of the pie.
opportunity exists, if the opportunity exists for an incumbent to capture some of the export market at a higher price, where do you think the nitrogen is going?
Yeah, and that's a great situation. Take UAN, for example. UAN across North America has been incredibly tight. And why has that been? Because European farmers had been willing for this whole fertilizer year to pay more than the North America farmer has. And all of a sudden, we are looking at tremendously large exports. And all of a sudden, here we are in spring, and inventories are near impossible to find for April and May.
So I was going to go over to Ed, but Ed, I'm going to hold you for a second. If anybody's got questions or comments, they can go and throw it into the Q&A section. Warren, I'm going to turn to you for a second because I'm going to bounce over here to the investment side of the equation. Genesis Fertilizer, and I talked to Jason Mann a lot about this. Their philosophy has been that farmers should own 75% of this investment. We hear all the time from investment advisors that farms should have off-farm investment. They should diversify. Not everything should be on the farm. There should be some diversification. It's not our game to diversify outside the farm, but if you have an opportunity to invest in a company like Genesis, where you're not only an investor, but you're an off-taker, and it puts you in a preferential position. I know that you've looked at the numbers. Can you talk to me a little bit about why did you invest? Because I'll use the word invest first, and we'll talk about farming and offtake later. But why did you invest in Genesis Fertilizer?
Yeah, a lot of the points that Josh had mentioned were things even from a farming perspective that I don't know, felt or noticed, just that glaring issue of manufactured shortages, or there's always never seems to be enough fertilizer here. So every time I'd call in, you'd go, okay, there's a quote, oh, we got a new email, there's a new price adjustment, just because, well, they had the opportunity. It's a closed market is what I feel like. And because of that, it's always a higher asking price. So it's a little bit frustrating to always be on the outside looking in. I know just, Genesis is kind of like an offshoot of Farmers North America or AgriCity, and the whole time we had that opportunity of being almost on the inside looking out, or being part of the movement that could affect prices, because people or groups are power and power respects power. So the whole idea of being able to invest in it, having that idea of saying, okay, now we have this opportunity to make it and then direct it, whether to us or to sell it to others. It just something that ringed in my ears of, having the opportunity to put something into it.
So how do you look at the project itself? You've been watching this for a long time. A lot of farmers have been told or fed information that the project is too big to go forward. They're skeptical. You've been watching the progress. You have been in early, and you're watching the progress. What's your take on it?
Yeah, like even when I first heard about it back when it was just Project N, I said, well, I want to put in, putting in any money at any time from a farm perspective, like, where are we going to get this money from, But she said, I want to put in a little bit even to help, because if everybody does that, there is going to be enough to get the ball rolling. And once this ball starts rolling, I mean, really, it's from a money perspective, from a financial, from other investors or whatever, it makes sense because it's a cheap area to grow. Like it's economically feasible in Western Canada to produce this product, and there's a market for it. There's the balance sheet works. So I guess that was the real reason.
All right, I'll circle back to you, Ed. I'm going to turn to you now because this is really interesting. I have just countless number of colonies that I'm friends with. You're from Rosedale Colony. When you consider how you guys make, let's say you need 1,000 tons. Not unusual for a colony to need 1,000 tons of urea. The total investment would be, say, $750,000 for you. 15% is upfront, and the rest of it is needed when the shovels go in the ground. Now, you're different than Warren in that Warren will make up his mind by himself, but the decision making at a colony is different. You've got elders that you need to consider. Tell me a little bit about the discussion that happened at Rosedale Colony, and what were the things that you guys were weighing out as you were trying to make a decision to invest in Genesis?
Well, we know we never have a problem about getting fertilizer because we got within 100 miles, we got P&H, Viterra, all these elevators. But one of our biggest thing is you buy fertilizer for $500 today. Next year it's $1,100. It didn't sound feasible that it would cost that much more. Who's making that money? Can we keep it in the farm and start affording the machinery, first of all? We have no control over the pricing of grain. So if we can keep this extra profit that whoever's making it, it doesn't cost the plant that much more. If we can keep it coming back to the farmers, it makes sense, especially if we can use the end product.
So you're looking at this from two perspectives, and
yes.
Warren said, number one is we want to be shareholders in the plant, because when fertilizer goes to $1,200, there's a lot of money there, and we should be shareholders to capture some of that. Number two, we want to make sure that supplies are assured. You say that's not a really big problem. But number three, you guys look at this very much from an intergenerational business, right? You're looking at this 2-3 generations down the road. How did that enter into the discussion?
Well, that was a big decision too. If we can invest into something that will stay there for our kids and grandkids, then they can look back and decide on same things in the future. To invest in things that we are the end users, not try to invest in things that we have no control over. And invest into ag things. Try and stay in the ag side of things so we can benefit too, especially if you're the end user of these products. We can't invest in Case IH or something, but to adjust the pricing, but that's the way it goes. But it was a good decision. We decided if we want to invest into, there's a lot of places you can invest, and we can invest into the ag side of things. At least we are the user of these products. And and we decided to go for it.
Now, when it comes to you buying this fertilizer from Genesis, whether it's the urea ammonium sulfate or the urea, you're going to pay fair market price. The market price is going to be there. You know that. But Terry, I want to turn to you for a second. As the Genesis project goes forward, you're also talking about supplying the retail market. So I'm interested in, are there conversations happening? Some come to mind immediately for me. If I was a co-op in Canada, I'd be looking at the project and saying, I think that we'd like to get close to Genesis. But Canada is potash sovereign. We're sulfur sovereign. With Genesis, we're going to be nitrogen sovereign, but you guys have just opened up a discussion with the Arctic, I think it's called Arctic Gateway at Port Churchill, to bring phosphate in. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that goes over to Ed and to Warren about making sure you guys have ability to supply the whole package.
Well, that's it, Rob. We signed an agreement with Arctic Gateway. They own the Port of Churchill. It's actually called One North is the company who owns Arctic Gateway, and the whole plan is to bring in phosphate through Churchill, which is the closest saltwater port to Western Canada. Their rail line's done, and they've upgraded the rail line, and they are exporting out of that port. Shortly after our announcement, they did get money from the federal government and the Manitoba provincial government to upgrade that port to bring in imports. So that's very positive.
Josh, from your standpoint, how's that strategy wash with you? If if you look at the fertilizer markets globally, the one thing that Canada doesn't have, although there's kind of hinting, I got a meeting next week actually with somebody who's got some phosphate aspirations in Canada. How does that strategy sit with you? That whole idea of also opening up the phosphate channel.
It's desperately needed. I'll tell you what, one of the things that everybody's going to be shocked by is finding out that not only did we not get a phosphate summer reset this year, you are going to be seeing phosphate prices higher this summer than what they're going to be in the springtime. And again, a lot of that goes back to China. China normally exports 9-10 million tons of DAP MAP a year. The government is coming out with their controlled program and saying you'll get 4 million tons this year. That's it. Now there's some new production coming online around the world, but again, we've been suffering in North America. When our operating rates are normal, we're okay. There's just enough here, but those places like to export to Latin America, South America, those types of places, and production has really been suffering here the last couple of years. So having new phosphate production, expanded phosphate production would be a great thing. There's some stuff coming around the world as well that's going to help. But when you start to look at the population growth, the demand growth, all of those projects are going to be needed.
I want to talk about demand growth. Shifting back over to you, Warren, for a second. Thinking about your farming operations since you were a kid to now, what's happened to the yield targets that you set on the farm? Where are you at compared to 40 years ago?
Oh yeah, I started personally in 1987. And back then we didn't even use fertilizer. We tried to just, grow a green manure crop with it and mulch it down and do half and half farming. So the whole transformation to go to conservation and rotation with legumes and oil seeds and also trying to maximize and increase your yield, increase the fiber fertility in the soil. All of that is related to fertilizer application and good farming techniques. And so our target is constantly surprising us each year, just because if you try to do the right things, and hopefully the weather cooperates and the rain cooperates and the strong winds settle down and you get a new surprise. And so the benchmark is continuing to change just because of consistent good farming practices, which includes fertilizer application.
Ed, on your farm, did you ever imagine that the farming operation would be stroking the kind of checks that, like $1 million checks and stuff like that for inputs and product? Did you ever think it was going to get that big?
No, that's for sure. 30 years ago, there was no such a thing as recropping. Now every acre gets recropped and the yields are higher than they were on summer fallow, but it's a dry area. So we're really trying not to over push pulses, but we're really into the pulses. But it's a tough area to grow canola. It is a very dry. But if you grow canola, the $1 million checks are going out for the seed and fertilizer. But so pulses is our best thing to grow, lentils.
All right. So you're going to be augmenting your nitrogen with the pulses you're growing in rotation. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, we grow a lot of pulses, but so we need FOSS. It's the best thing that came on board that we can buy on FOSS. Hopefully, Jonas can run the FOSS thing too, so it's a one-stop place to get everything in one place.
And it's unusual. I think this might be my first Zoom meeting with a Hutterite farmer. It's unusual. And so I want to thank you for doing this, but why did you do this? Like, why did you put yourself out there? This is quite the thing you just did here.
Well, I'm all optimistic. I'm not a pessimist. I want this thing to go. We got to keep the profits in the farmers in Canada, first of all, and not send it out of the country. So we can only help each other. If we help each other, it'd be a lot easier road to travel. One farmer for the other.
What's it like in conversation with your brethren, your other Hutterite colony friends across Canada? Are you I know there's there's the internet, there's the phone net, and then there's a Hutternet, which is a way faster method of communication. So where are you at with the conversations with your fellows, friends?
Well, you talk to some guys, and you know, at a colony, it's a decision amongst not just one or two people. It's a decision on a group, and if it's 50-50, but you talk to certain people, they're optimistic about it. But if there's colonies that have invested in other things and it went sour, they're reluctant to take that step.
Mm-hmm.
But the last year, you hear a lot more positive talk, and a lot of investments here in southern Alberta. I think we want it because it's especially in our part, it's dry. So you try to take advantage of everywhere you can save a buck. But it's a mixed feelings, more positive than negative, I think. Especially in the foremost area, there's some big farms in the foremost area. So we need to hit the road hard in that area.
Terry, when you think about this, the farm, 75% of the equity of Genesis is earmarked for farmers. It's very significant. Can you talk a little bit? Let's say the investment from Ed's colony was they need 1,000 tons, $750,000 would be a target that they would invest. Talk a little bit about what the process is, how much down now versus later. Where does the money go? Does money go to Terry Dubuque in your pocket, Terry? Where does the money go?
Good question, Rob. So everybody that is out raising money for Genesis are what we call exempt market dealing representatives. So they're licensed and registered with securities in the areas that they go out and raise money. So anybody who invests writes a check to a company called Access Capital, who is actually the company who's raising the money. So they cut a check to Access Capital in trust. It goes into a trust account. We ask for a minimum of 15% down, and the remainder, what we call FID, or final investment decision. So when we hit final investment decision, that really means that we're going ahead and we're putting shovels in the ground. That means the front end engineering is done. The banks are on board. We have all the money in place, and environmental permitting's done. All the permitting's done, and we're going ahead. That's when the remainder is asked for, and people can put down more than 15% if they want, or they can put down 100%, but the minimum is 15.
Okay, so if I'm going to invest $100,000 in Genesis, I stroke a check for 15 grand. It goes into this holding company, right?
Yeah.
For you guys to utilize, and I'm not going to come up with the other 85,000 until the time is ready, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. I got a question, Josh, from Ryan here. This is a short-term question, but are the droughts and frost issues in Europe and China causing replanting of the crop and are going to impact fertilizer prices in the coming months? Any comment on that? Or
I can't say they have been big enough yet that we're changing anything on our side. I'd say it's probably one of those watch and see how it plays out. Typically speaking, I mean, let's face it, you get the fertilizer on before you plant the seed, and maybe there's an issue where if they have to replant and change it over to another crop that's less intensive, maybe that lowers the demand, but that's going to be a 2026 issue, not a 2025. So, very long answer short. I don't believe it's a short term thing that we're going to change anything on our side.
Okay, Terry, Ryan's also asking, is shipping able to keep up enough with the importation of product from Churchill? I don't think this is a year-round thing right now, but can you talk about the capacity of Churchill to handle your phosphate imports for the Genesis super plants?
Yeah, I honestly don't know, Rob, but I do know that the rail line is upgraded and that they can handle unit trains. So, a vessel, Josh, if it comes in, I believe 60,000 tons. Sounds, I don't know if that's short tons or metric tons, but so that would be a unit train would handle 10,000 tons at a time.
Terry, another question just came in. This is very appropriate. So let's say 15% goes down now, and then you've talked about the other 85% needed to be committed when all of these other things are happening. Janelle just asked, when is the final decision expected? When based on the current feed study and the timeline, I know I've seen some Gantt charts from you guys. When do you think that we'd be shovel ready where the people would have to ante up for the rest of the investment?
Yeah, so final investment decision is scheduled to be done this time next year,
Okay.
and shovel in the ground in late Q2 or early Q3 of next year.
All right. Warren, over to you. A little bit on the impact of technology on the nitrogen game. I may come to Josh and Ed on this as well, but one time I built back when I was young and had dark hair, I built a couple fertilizer plants that had blending facilities, one in Riverhurst, Saskatchewan, another one in Two Hills, Alberta, and we blended everything for the farmers. Well, today, a lot of the blenders are on rubber. And what I mean by that is you got variable rate fertilizer. So where do you sit right now, Warren, on your farm, or what do you see with respect to more and more straight products going to the farm and the blending actually being done on rubber with variable rate air seeder technology?
Yeah, that's exactly the evolution that's happened on our farm. We used to buy the blend for canola or buy the durum blend, and then that would be in the bin, and it was all pre-mixed and blended at the plant, bring the load in. The last 3 years, with different hoppers. So we got an air drill that's got 4 hoppers on it. So great, you can choose one's going to have seed in it, and you could have up to 3 different individual fertilizers, and then just put on the rate that you want based on if you're putting in this, oil seed or that cereal or that pulse. So we've really completely switched over to just straight urea, straight phosphate, straight potash, straight anything. And then we just do the blending as we go based on the soil tests for that field or that area.
Well, that's amazing. We didn't have this set up. I didn't know that you were actually doing that, but agronomically, that makes a lot of sense. That back in the AgriTrend days, that's what we did as a firm, is we made all the prescriptions for the farmers and they took the straight product. Ed, where are you at in your mind with respect to where technology is going to create more pull on nitrogen going forward?
Well, we all went variable rate now, so that's why we need every drill. We have one drill with 5 compartments, so we can use.
There you go.
With variable rate, we get a prescription for every field, so we don't want blends. The only thing we blend is ESN into nitrogen for slow re-release because of the lack of rain. But we don't want no blends because we all do prescription farming now with variable rate. So it's definitely better with no blends. You could put down the amount of phos you want, or the nitrogen, or the sulfur, whatever it's asking for on the prescription.
I think this is a item that a lot of people underestimate. You have the fertilizer supplies, and a lot of times the farmers would go, like you said, Warren, they would go into to get their urea, their canola blend, or they get their wheat or barley blend and take it back. And today, a lot of that is coming like straight product to the farm, and the blending is done on rubber. So Terry, a question came in. again from Janelle, and they want the question is UAN. Now we know that Genesis Fertilizer has a plan in place for urea ammonium sulfate, DEF. Is there any UAN on the books for the project? What's the answer there?
Well, we did contemplate it, and we can still do it, but first we need to build the urea plant, and the financials, as you know, and Josh will know this as well. The financials of these plants are very robust, so we felt that let's get a profitable plant up and running, and then those owners can decide to go into UAN. But really, we didn't go forward with UAN mainly because of the concern around capex. And we wanted to get a plant built first, make some money, and then move to other streams.
Okay, thanks. Josh, can you talk a little bit about the demand of nitrogen, North American demand of nitrogen? Can you, I'm trying to get into Josh's crystal ball here and looking ahead into the future. Ed said something very important a while ago, and that is back in the day, we were a lot of summer fallow, and today we're not. And our practices are changing. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in the U.S., North American perspective, and surely you must have mapped out some nitrogen consumption charts going forward.
Yeah, and when you look at North America as a whole, there is going to continue to be rising demand. And that has to do with the genetics of the crop. But let's face it, we're getting really stinking good at raising corn. We're getting really good at raising all these crops. Well, one of the bad parts about that is the bigger the yield, the more stuff you pull out, the more nutrients it requires to actually reach those benchmarks. But you don't really see a massive surge, if you will. We're getting much better, especially when prices get high, about getting very good about saying this acre needs more, that acre needs less, and to be able to pinpoint what is needed exactly where it needs. And that's why some of these stories like you're talking about, where hey, I can sit there and change the flow and change the pattern of the products that are in the spreader as I go through the field. I no longer have to sit there and say, well, I guess I need a 20-10-5 split and just do the whole field that way. I can actually tailor make it to the entire field. So we're getting extremely, extremely efficient with this. Where it starts to get very interesting, this is where some of the competition comes around the world. Look at places like Brazil. Look at places like India. Frankly speaking, look at places like China. If you visit these places, they are doing wonderful things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to beat these places down. But technologically speaking, on the ag side, they are eons behind us. And what that means is as they start to kind of continue to build out, those things will get a little bit more efficient, but they're also building more farmland. Look at Brazil tearing out the rainforest, tons and tons of acres being created every single year. And that's a massive surge in demand. So, and this is all a very roundabout way of saying we continue to see nitrogen demand going higher, and you will see some of these fluctuations. When prices get really high, farmers get really technologically advanced in order to cut costs wherever they possibly can. When prices get cheap, well, those technological things, those things get expensive as well. So when product gets cheap, we kind of go back in those patterns of, you know what, just toss it out there and be done with it.
Well, I know that in my travels to Argentina and Brazil, I've got a lot of friends over there that we shouldn't discount their adoption of technology. They are moving really, really fast.
They are.
Yeah, they really.
Yeah,
Terry,
and that's,
yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, they're doing a very good job. But once you start going to like the Indias of the world and China, and you go through there, I mean, it's still areas where they used to have, a couple, 2-3 pigs in the back pen, and that's what they survived on. So still a long way to go with those guys.
Yeah. Ed, you mentioned slow release. I'm just going to circle back and then go to Terry on ESN. So if the listeners don't know, most will. These are either urease or nitrification inhibitors. You're using those on fertilizer for what purpose right now? Why are you doing that, Ed?
We try to put 25% of ESN in our nitrogen for slow release because of the rain. Like we haven't had rain in May. We had 3/10 and it's very dry. So hopefully once we get the rain here, it's going to start releasing the ESN. And we do that on our winter crops, and it works out pretty good. Right now, the winter wheat is pretty brown because it's lack of moisture. But we like ESN, or all our area, that whole neighbor, all southern Alberta where it gets dry, pretty well everybody uses ESN or slow release. Either spray it on their fertilizer, I don't know how it's called, or ESN.
Right. So, Terry, inside the super centers, you'll be able to do impregnation of urease and nitrification inhibitors, but also, you know, that product you guys are going to produce, urea ammonium sulfate, it'd be equivalent to like an Amidas product. And I have seen the research results of those products, and they are excellent. So, to Ed's point, as the super centers are getting built, which are distribution centers, will you guys be able to do things like incorporate slow release into those facilities?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so the one that we built at Belle Plaine is got a HIM blender from Sackett, Waconia. It can load a blended Super B in 7.5 minutes. It's got multiple nozzles in the blender where it can spray ESN or agritane or contain or, you know, boron, zinc, sulfur, all the stuff that you need in a blend, and their need for speed. So it's also got a heated floor in the alley so the product stays dry. It's got an oiler. If the product comes in dusty, we can oil it down. 100% of all the product goes through a conditioner, so there's no clumps in the product, and it's all indoors. So it's those are the super centers that we built. And in terms of
how many of them are going to be? I mean, you said you got one up at Belle Plaine right now. How many are there going to be there?
6 more across Western Canada. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good.
I was just going to touch, though, Rob, on the UAS, the Amidas product itself. So it is basically sulfur added to the urea at the urea melt phase and then pearled. So, I mean, operationally, it provides people with some advantages. You only need one hopper on your seeder, so you don't have to have a hopper for urea and a hopper for sulfur. It's all on one product. And if anybody's ever used sulfur fines in the past and it gets a little moist, well, it tends to plug up the drills, and this product would take that away.
Yeah, well, I can tell you agronomically that urea ammonium sulfate is a beautiful product. Okay, I'm going to wind this up here. If there's any more questions to come into the Q&A, throw them into the Q&A, and I'll address them. Well, where are the super centers planned to go? Do you know yet?
I do know.
You do know.
I do know. Well, I mean, we've signed options and lease agreements at various locations. I mean, I can tell you for sure there's one going up in the Alberta Peace area because you just have to have one there, and that may change over time because they are options and lease agreements. But basically, one in Manitoba, 3 in Saskatchewan, and 3 in Alberta.
Good. Another question just came in from Matt. Really good question, actually. He says, you can see the understanding of the rationale for farmers to underpin this investment. However, there's a time when that, stepping on that gas, and you need to pull back and say, where are the commercial investors? Can you talk a little bit about the proportionality, Terry, of the investment between the farmer target and the commercial? Like we've talked about this, if the farmers don't step up, the commercial interests will.
Yeah, and we have to, right? So people like Ed and Warren who are on this call have trusted us to get a plant built. And our CFO, Mark Smith, says it probably the best. He says, the train's left the station. We've got an army of engineers working on this front-end engineering and design, and we want farmers to own this as much as we possibly can. But if they don't step up, we have to have PricewaterhouseCoopers go get money from the market.
Okay, and you're prepared to do that.
Yeah.
Turning back to you again, Terry, here, a question in from Willie. And I guess this is just the risk of the project, the size. Once the shovels hit the ground, investors cough up the remaining funding they've committed. What are the chances the project will fold? The biggest concern that Willie has as an investor, he's optimistic, but it's still bugging him. What if you go with there and the 15% is committed, is gone? you call for the 85% and it folds. Like, what are you doing to try to, there's always a risk. What are you trying to do to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Willie's talking about the money or the construction risk.
Well, the construction risk, maybe that the you know, it fails in the end. I mean,
Right. There's always risk. You're right. I mean, you never know what's going to take place. Escalated prices, tariffs, that type of thing. But when you have all the banks on board, that means we've hit final investment decision. That means you've started construction. It's pretty difficult to shut down a project when you already started spending banks' money. So,
all right. And that leads to the next question. What if the 75% farmer investment isn't met? Well, the commercial interests will step in and take that.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the farmers have a preferential treatment in this as offtake farmers. You also get a preferential, I don't know what the word, dividend or whatever, Terry, is that right?
It's a premium. Yeah, it's a premium on their dividends, so they get a 10% premium on their dividends. It's actually called distributions because it's a limited partnership structure.
Okay. Josh, I'm going to wind it up with you, and I'm going to go back to Ed and then Warren. So, Josh, your final comments on your excitement or enthusiasm around the project.
Listen, I'm a big fan of anybody who can build new production that is not one of the big manufacturers already in the space. We are a continent that is still dependent on internationally produced product. And as we have continued to see, when tempers flare, that is something that can be used as a weapon. I mean, when you look at every nation around the world, I don't care what nation it is, every single one of them has a individual strategy. Keep your people fed. If the Chinas and the Russias and the Brazils and all these places around the world, if they ever get smart enough to figure out that fight and they start saying, you know what, you're done, no more product for you, no more nitrogen, our food production starts to suffer. And all of a sudden, that very, very basic core of every government all of a sudden starts to struggle. I'm tired of being dependent on the rest of the world. I'm tired of reading through the list and being like, wow, Russia, Qatar, Iran, Egypt, China, these are not places I want to visit. So I don't want to be dependent on eating from these types of places.
Well,
And then
that's a
yeah,
pretty,
yeah,
pretty strong statement.
And then you take it from the environmentalist. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm a greenie and I'm going to go chain myself to a tree or anything. I'm a realist, but I want to leave the world in a better spot for my kids than what we took it in. And what I mean by that is we can either make the new production here, and we can have some of the best guidelines in the world, some of the best environmental standards in the world. We can produce this as cleanly as humanly possible.
Yeah,
we can leave it a chance.
We haven't talked about that, but this plant will be one of the greenest plants producing nitrogen on the planet. Ed,
exactly.
what's your comment back to the fellow listeners and your friends that are listening into you? What's your comment?
Well, I gotta agree with Josh. We need to build this plant where we don't have the Yaris or CF. We need a plant in this part of the country where we can drive down the highway and see this big sign, Genesis, owned by farms, fertilizer plant. We need to start it and not have different countries come in, and we got big butcher outfits here in Canada where it's owned by Brazilians. We need it in Canada, keep it in Canada, especially if it's farmers owned.
Thanks,
Ed.
Nice
down the highway and see this Genesis sign, farmer owned fertilizer plant. So we have to get up a sign one of these days.
Thanks for doing this, Ed. This was great. Warren, last word to you. We got a whole bunch of farmers on the call today. A lot of people have been sitting on their hands trying to make this decision. You've been there for a long time. What's your message? You put your own cash out, so it's not like you're being endorsed. So what's your final message to these guys?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess a person could kick tires forever on something, say, can we do it? Can we not do it? When every time we've ever made a decision, we get a big look at a price of land. You say, oh man, I wonder if I could buy that land. It's a good decision. I'm really sticking my neck out. And then next year you look back, and you're like, why was that ever a good decision? And it happens again and again in life that way, where if you just say, you know what, this is worth it. It pencils out. We get to keep the profits. We get to help direct this industry. We get to be part of it. And, you know, anytime a farmer makes money, you get a better crop or better prices, where does the money go? It always goes around, you build something, it helps out the local person. Every time we do something as farmers, the money helps the agriculture community, as opposed to moving overseas to an investor or this and that. So yeah, really now is the time to get in on this. Now's the time to do it. And looking back, it'll be like every other decision we made. It's like, boy, was that ever a good time to do it?
Well, I want to thank everybody for being on this AGvisorPRO podcast. Please download AGvisorPRO on your mobile iOS or Android and join the Genesis Fertilizer community. To all of you guys, thanks so much for being on the call. And Ed, praying for some rain for you guys. And same thing for you, Warren. I think you're in better shape than Ed. So hopefully we'll get that winter wheat growing. Thanks for being with us, guys. It was a good call.
Thank you.
Thanks.